All right, listen to this because this one caught a lot of people off guard. It's official now. Dan Bongino is leaving the FBI, and once you really dig into what's been said, the reason starts to become pretty clear. Before we get into it, do me a quick favor, like and subscribe. It only takes 2 seconds, and it really helps the channel. All right, so when I first saw the confirmation from both Dan and President Trump, I wasn't shocked. Honestly, I was disappointed. And yeah, I'll admit it, part of that disappointment is selfish. I liked Dan in that role. I trusted him there. I wanted him to stay because I felt like someone finally had their hands inside an agency that desperately needs reform. But then reality sets in. Dan has a family. He has a wife and kids he barely got to see. He was living in D.C., staring at the same walls every day, completely separated from the life he built back home. That wears on anyone, no matter how tough they are, and Trump even acknowledged it. Dan gave up a lot to take that job, including a podcast that was pulling in serious money, millions. That's not a small thing to walk away from, especially when you feel boxed in once you're inside government. And let's be honest here, I don't think this was just about money or family. I think there were roadblocks. I think there's a deeply entrenched system inside the FBI that doesn't change overnight. You don't clean out decades of bureaucracy in a few months. And if you can't do the job the way you believe it needs to be done, eventually you ask yourself why you're sacrificing everything for it. Now, after the news broke, a clip started circulating again from earlier this year. Dan was on Fox and he was talking about visiting one of the FBI facilities. A woman told him she missed watching his show. Dan joked that he missed himself too, but then he got serious. He talked about how part of him felt like it was dying, about being alone in D.C., separated from his wife, not divorced, but living apart, and how hard that actually was. When you hear it in his own words, it hits differently. Then came the reaction from critics. One former official went on TV and basically said this outcome surprised no one. He argued that Dan never spoke the way a typical deputy director does. No glowing praise for the agency, no emphasis on the privilege of the role. He even criticized Dan for not publicly praising FBI employees in his exit statement. His conclusion was blunt. He claimed Dan was unprepared, unqualified, and that it was better for both sides that he move on. That's where opinions really split. Some people see this as failure. Others see it as honesty. Personally, I think Dan walked into something far bigger and more resistant than most people realize. And sometimes the smartest move is knowing when the fight can't be won from the inside. When someone like Dan Bongino walks away, it's not because he suddenly stopped caring. It's usually because he cared too much and realized the system wasn't going to bend the way he hoped it would. You don't give up your platform, your income, and your personal freedom just to quit casually. That's not how someone wired like him operates. Think about what he walked into. And here's something else worth mentioning. Critics love to say he didn't sound like a traditional deputy director. That might actually be the point. Maybe he wasn't there to play the part. Maybe he wasn't interested in rehearsed praise or polished statements. Maybe he expected results, not ceremonies. At the end of the day, Dan Bongino didn't leave quietly because he failed. He left loudly because the reality didn't match the promise. And whether you agree with him or not, that alone tells you something important about how hard real reform actually is. This isn't the end of Dan Bongino. If anything, it's a return to where he has the most influence. And that might be exactly why some people are breathing easier now that he's gone. Tell me what you think. Was the system too broken to fix from the inside, or did the FBI lose one of the few people willing to challenge it? I want to know what you think. Was this inevitable, or was this a missed opportunity for real reform? Let me know in the comments.